Hi, this is HJ39KRATOM, and this is a policy analysis. I call it KRATOM Wars. So, in this analysis, we will discuss first the bill that's been introduced about KRATOM, which is it's a resolution, Joint Resolution 39. Then define KRATOM, what is it, and who is affected by this bill, or who would be affected. Who uses KRATOM and what is the legal history of KRATOM in the United States. And then we'll do a critical analysis of why this resolution is being proposed. And finally, the outcome of the resolution. Where does it stand now, and what is the future for KRATOM? So what is KRATOM? KRATOM is a plant or a tree. Its leaves that are it's derived from the leaves of a tree called Mitragyne speciosa, which is in the same family as the coffee plant and is native to Southeast Asia. KRATOM has been used for centuries by Southeast Asians as a mild stimulant in lower doses. They chew the leaves, and in higher doses, it is a pain reliever. So, Virginia Joint Resolution 39 was introduced in January 2020 by Patron John McGuire III, and this was in response to mounting pressure from local and state government factions and constituents, related to several deaths that occurred where KRATOM was found in the bloodstream of the deceased. There were also other drugs found in the bloodstreams of the deceased, but nevertheless, a lot of drug hysteria was created, especially in the light of the opioid epidemic. People believed, these factions believed that this drug behaves like an opioid because the FDA says it does. So the objective for the resolution was to really understand what properties made up the plant-based supplement called KRATOM. And in fact, is it really deadly? Is it really addictive? The goal of the politicians and other key stakeholders is to ban or schedule the plant as Control 1, no medical value, and highly addictive, if the Board of Pharmacy has any reasonable doubt as to the efficacy and safety of the substance. Who uses KRATOM? There are almost 16 million estimated users in the United States, and a big whopping 46% of them take it to recover from opioid addiction, which is very important right now with the opioid crisis. 40% are older people who take KRATOM for pain relief as an alternative to opioids, and some are younger people that take it for pain relief as an alternative to opioids because it doesn't have the addiction potential or the cognitive fuzziness that opioids produce. And the average age of a KRATOM user is 40 years old. So, KRATOM has a pretty questionable legal history in the U.S. Started out okay. Nobody knows when KRATOM began to be used here, but it started to come on the scene in popularity in the 1990s. That's when people started finding it in smoke shops and in gas stations, and the use started to spread. It's also used all over the rest of the world as well, and in 2012, the FDA placed an import alert on KRATOM because there were 12 deaths in Sweden that were said to be caused by KRATOM, but eventually turned out to be caused by another opioid or other opioids or other psychoactive drugs that were found in the system. And then in 2012, because of the hysteria, 6 states in the U.S. went ahead and banned KRATOM between 2012 and 2016. And because of that, the DEA, upon request of the FDA in August 2016, filed a notice of intent to ban the active ingredients in KRATOM. This was an emergency notice where they were going to ban it within 2 days, but there was such a protest from the public that the DEA pulled back on the emergency notice and said they would give it 30 days and they would take public comments during that time. In that time, in those 30 days, 23,132 comments were submitted by congresspeople, the medical community, researchers, pharmacists and pharmaceutical people, and users of KRATOM, and they were protesting the ban. So in 2016, in September, the DEA withdrew its intent. This is unprecedented, but they withdrew their intent to schedule it, and they directed the FDA to provide scientific justification for banning KRATOM. So what is all this hysteria about? I mean, is this scrutiny justified, or is it in fact hysteria? Again, there were several deaths and several calls to the Poison Control Center. None of them were found to be caused by KRATOM alone, and none of them were found to be caused by the KRATOM leaves. Some of them were caused by adulterated KRATOM, where irresponsible vendors had gone and added other opioid substances to the KRATOM mixture. But in 2018, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, actually went ahead and tested KRATOM, the natural product, and their results directly refuted the FDA's claim that KRATOM is dangerously addictive and has opioid-like effects. Additionally, NIDA issued a public statement refuting the FDA's assertion of overdose potential. And this was huge. They also went ahead and got several $1 million of research money from the government to study KRATOM. But despite all that, the DEA and FDA are still pursuing the ban. They're still calling it a drug of concern, and they're still warning users not to use it. With increasing use of KRATOM as an alternative to opioid painkillers and as a way for addicts to abstain from their use, pharmaceutical companies have a lot to lose. This is just something to consider. Big Pharma has a major presence in the government as one of the biggest lobby organizations and campaign funders. This creates a conflict of interest for government agencies, and in the manner of critical thinking with drug policies, it has to be considered that racial and ethnic statuses often inform policy decisions, especially around drugs, leaving questions around why some drugs are illegal and why criminal penalties for possessing or selling them are harsher than for other drugs. It is important to note here also that people with addiction are also on the fringes of society regardless of their race or socioeconomic status. There's quite a bit of intersectionality that also has to be considered. So the outcome of HJ39, it was referred to the Rules Subcommittee where it was laid on the table. The reason it was laid on the table is because the Virginia Board of Pharmacy refused to do the study, citing lack of resources. The bill subsequently died, and to date, no further legislation has been introduced or on the studying or banning of KRATOM in Virginia. So, conclusions and lessons learned. KRATOM remains legal and unregulated in 44 states in the U.S. Most KRATOM users would like the product to be regulated in order to protect themselves from using adulterated products. Ohio is the first state to regulate KRATOM with the KRATOM Consumer Protection Act that establishes penalties for KRATOM dealers and vendors who attempt to sell adulterated KRATOM products, which could be dangerous or deadly. Lessons learned are that KRATOM does save lives of millions by helping them get off opioids and could very well be the best solution that we have right now for the opioid epidemic. The other lesson learned is that advocacy really works. When you consider that the DEA withdrew their intention to ban the substance based on all of the people that came forward to advocate for KRATOM. Thank you for watching my video.